Hello and greetings to all. The purpose of this video is to continue the topic that I began last week, which deals with the rise of Afrocentric groups, which are seeking to appropriate not only the heritage and cultures of the indigenous Americans, but also worldwide. I did mention in a previous video that whenever they came out with the movie Gods of Egypt, a lot of people did voice their disapproval at the entirely or mostly white cast. Saying that the original Egyptians weren't white, they were black. Other people saying that they were along the lines of the Middle Eastern phenotype of renown that we know of nowadays. And for the most part, a lot of us, peoples of color, who sided with them, saying that this was yet again a manifestation of white supremacy and elevating the status of white people above any other races, saying that if people of antiquity were great, more than likely they were white. But now that it's reaching home, and these Afrocentrics are stating not only were we the first Egyptians, the first Africans, the first everybody, we were also the original indigenous persons of the America. This is pretty sensitive, as I mentioned earlier, because we have been dealing with and continue to deal with white supremacy and the implications that is brought upon us as indigenous populations. And now we have another frontier, as I also mentioned previously, with these Afrocentric groups. Pretty much the backbone of a lot of these allegations stem from the likes of this guy. I don't know if you can see, it's the Olmec heads. The glare is really bad, but it's pretty much the Olmec heads saying that these statues must have been African since they do have larger lips and wider noses. Anybody who knows quite a bit of Mexicans, especially those with more indigenous features, at least know at least a couple of people with this same phenotype with the wider nose and larger lips. As a matter of fact, my mother's father, may he rest in peace, does have that phenotype. So we Mexicans can also have wider noses and big lips. Anybody knows that. There's a lot of memes out there on social media that are comparing the Olmec statues with indigenous people from Mexico and from the Americas now, and you're seeing how it ties in, since Africans are taking these big-lipped statues and comparing them to themselves. Then there are also other Olmec statues which feature persons with features and characteristics that are not necessarily African in origin, which are being ignored or not acknowledged as much. This appropriation of these cultures is pretty much people just helping themselves to this heritage, and it is on the rise also that indigenous persons are beginning to embrace who they are because of social media, because of technology. A lot of people are getting to learn more about their cultures and what our cultures have been through in the hands of white supremacy. And as a result of that, we are beginning to embrace our culture, wanting to learn our languages, wanting to become involved with cultural events. And with that said, it's sad that once we're coming to terms with who we are after we hated ourselves for looking a certain way, for speaking a certain way, for being a certain way, all of a sudden there's yet another set of obstacles to overcome, which is those people who are coming in and stating that they're the original Americans and that we are Siberian, Mongoloid invaders from Asia and whatnot. It's pretty hurtful, especially coming from a population that has gone through pretty much the same that we have been through. Rather than being in it together, they're just stepping in and appropriating all of this that has taken us so long, after so many generations of religion, of all these other contraptions. We're finally coming to terms with who we are and who we've been as a people, and they're kind of just undermining all of that. It's just unacceptable. It is along the lines of people referring to our ancestors pre European contact as primitive. As a matter of fact, there's a company back home. The name of this company is some guy who just makes beef jerky, whatever, but the name of the company is Primitive Cuts or something like that. And in the backdrop of where it says Primitive Cuts, there's a war bonnet, from, north, from American, plains natives. I'm sorry, it took a while to blurt that out. Referring to our ancestors as primitive is a pretty unfair generalization, because once again it reinforces the fact that we needed the Europeans to come and civilize us. It's 2021. I live in a small town in Texas. Anybody who drives through, and I ain't trying to be racist, anybody who drives by a trailer park or some other area where so-called white trash individuals live can really perceive these people as pretty primitive. So basically, just minus 500 years from that. And a lot of these villages and settlements and nations were ravaged by the smallpox. Europeans didn't have to set ground in these territories. They would send a messenger out to go see who these strange men were, catch the smallpox virus, come back to the settlement, and everybody was pretty much half dead by the time the Europeans arrived. So these populations were emaciated. These populations were damaged by this virus. When the Europeans came in, the people didn't look their best. Our ancestors were regal. They had amazing, feather arrangements. They had great attire, what I'm saying? But by the time that these Europeans showed up to a lot of these settlements and nations, the people were ravaged by the smallpox. So they looked pretty primitive. What I'm saying? Most Hollywood movies will perceive natives walking kind of like animals, kind of like cave people from, thousands of years. Obviously, if we are perceived a certain way, it is because a lot of these populations were ravaged, as I have mentioned fully, by the smallpox and other, other atrocities from colonialism, but also because there were just settlements out there, at war away from the nation. So we don't look our best whenever we're running away from an enemy that is killing us invisibly, namely through smallpox and through other contraptions. So that's pretty much it. Also saying that thanks to the Europeans, we have religion. If not, we'd be sacrificing thousands of people a day on top of pyramids. Well, we still have capital punishment. We have euthanasia. We have prisoners of war that are tormented and killed. So if our ancestors were primitive and cannibalistic and all that stuff, so are we today, now, fast forwarding 500 years. So there's a lot that we have to deal with and target and go after. So this is pretty much what this particular series is devoted to. So please follow along, like, comment, and share.